The big issue with the concept of a Bayonetta franchise is how complete that first game was. From streets into space, Bayonetta drives, shoots, and dances her way through 15 hours of non-stop mayhem, culminating in a fight with God. She fights everything from basic henchmen to skyscrapers. There's revenge, time travel, romance. Throw in enough extra content to give the biggest fans hundreds of hours to go back to, and it's hard to think of a more fully realized single-player experience. It's deserving of a sequel, but is it in need of one? Bayonetta 2 feels like the spin-off movie to a great TV show, where we get to enjoy our favorite characters, go through similar motions again, but all polished up and condensed into a tighter, smaller adventure that doesn't quite reach the scope of what came before, but clears up a few things from before and gives you another little window into that world you enjoyed, leaving you with a smile on your face by the end. Bayonetta 3 is like a TV series revival made years later that's trying to rekindle the magic on a strained budget while also throwing a questionable series of subversive changes into the mix to stay relevant. Its choices make for a weird, interesting game, but one I've had a hard time jiving with. Let's address the other big issue confronting Bayonetta as a series. Due to some behind-the-scenes business, Bayonetta after the first title has been relegated to the weakest home console hardware available. While Bayonetta 1 got to be a cutting-edge console release when it debuted on the 360 in 2009, the second game had to settle for being on very similar hardware. Released just under a year after the launch of the 360's successor, it wasn't a big deal though, and still felt like a modern game. Still to this day an impressive looking title. Fast forward to 2022, and the Switch is lagging behind console tech by nearly 10 years, and this is the system a follow-up to a series that prides itself on insane spectacle has to flaunt its stuff on. If in no other way, the Bayonetta series could have justified further games by implementing fresh new tech to showcase its mechanics in a new, breathtaking way. But it's not really gotten to do that in the last 13 years. Bayonetta 1 had a real next-gen feel to it for the time. You got the sense that what you were seeing would just not have been possible on a PS2 or something, but that feeling hasn't been replicated with the franchise since. One would be inclined to go easy on them if the new title at least remained as nice-looking as that first one, despite all of this. While I'd say the second game succeeded at that more or less, this third one is struggling to look as good as a 13-year-old 360 game. Everyone has a weird rubbery look to them, the environments are drab, muddy, or garish. There's a general lack of graphical detail. The frame rate is super inconsistent. It's a very often ugly game, and doesn't look half as nice as the previous two titles did. When I think back to the first, I picture a very consistent looking game too. The original had this muted canvas that it would then apply intense golden colors to, depending on how deep into angelic territory Bayonetta was getting. Her black attire and hot red streaks when attacking would then make for a good contrast with her foes and surroundings. With the drab worlds of Bayonetta 3, Bayonetta just blends into the miasma of on-screen clutter, which visually doesn't look great and doesn't serve the gameplay. There's still a lot of impressive, intricate animation for Bayonetta in gameplay, for her various attacks and moves, and that's kind of part of what makes it such a weird game to look at. The contrast of this high-quality animation on top of these dodgy-looking characters and environments. To accommodate the new demon slave system, where you can summon these giant monsters, the levels have been scaled up to be these massive, Serious Sam-sized levels, and I was thinking that before the game went to Egypt, detail becomes sparser likely because of this, combined with the hardware we're on. Plus, the title has to mostly forego the more intimate settings Bayonetta would slink in and out of in previous titles. Battling on vertical surfaces is going to be much rarer and feature much less complex terrain. I get that there might have been a worry things might have become stale if they had done what Bayo 2 did, another regal European-styled town with a little more detail, but the result here isn't good. I look back way more fondly on the town from Bayo 2 than any place here. Same goes for the color choices. Sure, there's a higher variety of colors and designs here than ever before in the series, but it all coalesces into this low-res, nasty soup of a final look. On the bright side, the slideshow cutscenes are now few and far between, but the trade-off seems to be that none of the cinemas go anywhere near as hard as in the original, which seemed to never run out of amazing fight choreography for Bayonetta. The action scenes just feel limp, lacking the flair and impact of what the original provided so often. The game doesn't reuse bits of levels to pad itself out either, but I mean, the game's a bunch of big empty rooms, so it's not surprising it doesn't have to resort to that. The Shoddy Presentation just gives the title a really cheap energy, which undermined most of the adventure for me. It looks like the mobile spin-off to Bayonetta, not the next main entry. This is somewhat a tangent, but what happened to the godly renders they used to advertise the games with? I can never forget the ones they did for the original Bayonetta, that painted Bayo as this larger-than-life mythical figure. I get that making high-res renders to promote games isn't as big of a thing anymore, now that in-game graphics are starting to be on par with them. But Bayonetta is stuck on the Switch, it doesn't have that luxury yet. So I guess the big question is the new demon slave mechanic good enough to justify making the game a big series of sparse open areas? Well, it's not an unnatural direction to take Bayonetta gameplay, I suppose, making her end fight demon summons more of an integral part of gameplay. Magic now allows you to summon one of many giant monsters that you can move around the level and attack enemies with for massive damage, with various moves and special abilities. At first there is a thrill to it, hitting a button and having a giant woman come out of nowhere and then telling her to launch an enemy into the stratosphere is cool, and there are plenty of moves a lot of these different summons have that have a novelty to them. But the way this new mechanic drags down the rest of the experience really had me questioning if it was a good idea. We've discussed how it drags down the quality of the presentation and level design, and we're going to do the same for the combat. I was playing around with the combos, kind of pleasantly surprised they seem to be more similar to the ones in Bayonetta 1 than the ones in 2, but something quickly felt off, and then it hit me. Oh, there's no extended gun input on Wicked Weaves now. This feels so wrong, not being able to do a prolonged gun input off a Wicked Weave. You can actually still do it in the game's prologue chapter where you play as Bayonetta 1 Bayonetta, but then you can't do it in the rest of the game as 3 Bayonetta. If you have a Bayonetta 1 save file, you can unlock Scarborough Fair, which I assume lets you do this in the rest of the game. But what if I'm a stupid asshole who has the release versions of the older games and not the Switch ports? Guess I'm out of luck. You didn't need that to get the old guns in 2. It's not like I'm complaining here they changed a few combo strings. This is like losing a pretty significant note in the rhythm of play. Longer combos let you follow up a Wicked Weave at the end with a quick summon attack from one of your demons. I guess that's what they want you doing now instead. Though again, you can only do that on the longer combos. Punch, kick, punch, just it doesn't feel right, I tell you. You can't help but feel like Bayonetta's core moveset is getting nerfed to encourage the use of these summons. Like, you can instant Wicked Weave like in prior games, but it's less effective than it once was. Probably because it doesn't cost any magic to use anymore. They want you spending your magic on the summons, but didn't want to remove insta-weaves altogether. So here they are, just weakened and no longer really fit for purpose. So you're starting the new Bayonetta and being told off essentially for playing it like a Bayonetta game. Now when you activate Witch Time, you don't want to mess around with some intense combo. Your time is going to be better spent using that window to spawn a giant hit XXX with. You don't even have to wait for Witch Time with the train summon. That one will slow down time for you, which seems a bit overpowered. 2019's Devil May Cry 5 had some similar mechanics with its new character V.
So it is written.
He also summons demons to do his bidding, and the player can spawn them in to do combos or special moves. Something I like about V's play though, more than the demon summoning in Bayo 3, is the interplay you could create between multiple summons at once and V himself, which isn't really the case in Bayo 3. Bayo stands still while you command just one demon. I'll say this, you can switch between demons pretty quickly, and you can queue up a move and start moving and fighting as Bayo again while they do it, which means you get a little window for a tag team opportunity, neat, though still limited. Later you can unlock the ability to move Bayo while the demon is summoned, but then you lose control of the inputs the demon does, so it's hard to work together. Here's the thing with V, maybe you don't like his style of play and you rush through his levels. Maybe you really took to the character and the twists on Devil May Cry gameplay he brought to the table. But I think we can all be thankful they didn't say nerf Dante's basic moveset, so we could have him summon a bunch of demons in his levels. Applying the demon summon mechanic to its own new unique character helped to let DMC5 lean into V as his own thing even more. Yes, he's weak, he can barely attack on his own and gives off a frail impression, but that's where the unique appeal of the character's play comes from. He can barely do anything, yet he can stroll through enemy territory cool as a cucumber thanks to his familiars. It's rewarding to play Puppet Master and have your squad make you untouchable as V casually walks through a level, reading a book or laughing maniacally, thinking all the while how excruciating it must be for an enemy if they could only just scratch this feeble-looking man, so frail and yet the enemies just can't lay a finger on him if you execute well. And these summons didn't have to be 8 stories tall for this to be satisfying. Over in Bayo 3, the last thing you want is to make the legendary ass-kicking witch Bayonetta weak and in need of protection as she stands around letting someone else do most of the work for her. But that's what ends up kind of happening. The classic Bayo gameplay is nerfed to make way for these giants, and yeah, sure, she's always gotten demons up to take out the trash once she'd done the beatdown, but usually it was her combos doing the beatdown, right? I feel like this is a good time to bring up something that's confused me about the Bayonetta series. Let me know if you felt the same way or just went along with it to not look like you missed something. In the original Bayonetta, I thought Bayonetta was making the demons out of her magic hair. Yeah, she was summoning the power of a demon, but it was like manifesting in this reality physically as her hair. In other words, through an extension of Bayonetta herself. But then in 2, they kind of walk that back to, oh, she's just teleporting the demons up here, and they're sort of covered in the hair to begin with. They're sort of under it. Okay, I feel like that's a bit less original, but at least Bayo always seemed very involved in the fight in that game. Now we've taken it all the way to Bayonetta asks somebody else to come up and do the fight as she stands back. The worst thing about this system, I think, is that it takes away the real risk-reward rhythms of Bayonetta gameplay. The magic meter, which now powers the demons instead of weaves or torture attacks, just recharges on its own and won't go down when you get hit. Fighting will make it go up faster, thankfully, so being active is rewarded, but it's unlikely to ever be that low anyway. In the original, fighting through enemies without being touched and being rewarded with a powerful torture attack or flurry of instant wicked weaves was exciting moment to moment. Here, these powerful demon slave summons will likely be accessible regardless of your performance. As long as you're not dead yet, you'll probably be able to use one. They're like a voice on your shoulder, better use me. Why are you doing combos? Come on, optimize your performance. I can see the dilemma, because if you really made the demon summons a reward for great play, fighting efficiently and being untouched, you'd be seeing them less, and then you'd be redesigning the scale and design of all the levels in the game for a feature a lot of players won't be seeing as much, or that much at all if they're not very good. But now there's so much less thrill to it. Now you can get kicked around and give it a moment and you can summon your best attacks, which is the opposite of the flow of play this series started on. Something really cool about Bayonetta was the large-scale bosses, where you still always felt in control. You played as this tiny mouse-sized character compared to the boss, but with just the basic core mechanics, you were able to roam around the body of a giant and disassemble them piece by piece. It felt so triumphant to take those core abilities and topple even the biggest foe with them. In Bayo 3, you get stuff like this, gimmick boss fights, basically comedy WarioWare games instead of proper end-level bosses to punctuate every few chapters. Or you'll be missing the bosses in Bayo 2 where you just kind of float around and stuff happens in the background now. At least that was still real gameplay. Well, you can't have Bayonetta running around the backside of some colossal boss now, as it would make summoning the giant demons too difficult. And there are a few one-off fights here with packs of enemies that don't let you summon demons, but of course, not that many. It's a core feature the game wants to flaunt. You're cut off from a large pool of your power, and the game doesn't want you in that state often. So they're not going to make bosses where you can run around and do combos as Bayonetta but not summon the demons. The game doesn't want to make the player weaker in a boss and lay bare in what are supposed to be Bayonetta's most triumphant moments in the title, that her basic moveset has been nerfed. So if a giant scale boss like the ones in 1 show up, the game resorts to a minigame instead. Bayonetta 3 should be praised for just how many different demons with unique animations there are, and how many different weapons you can unlock. This time around, the alternate weapons feature a lot more interesting and unique abilities and moves than I think we've seen in the series so far, which is cool. And I could leave it at that, right? Look at all these other weapons with so many combos and moves. The possibilities are endless, so much depth, right? Then I could walk away and be known far and wide as an intellectual gamer who appreciates the most complex of action titles. Except when I unlock these countless weapons, I'm not excited about it. When I really took note of that, a lot really clicked into place for me. You see, the weapons in Bayonetta 3 are designed in a way so that you could play the whole game with just one of them. All of them have a long list of dial combos, the same launch moves, the same stinger moves, teleport moves, transformations that make you faster. Some of them also have very unique moves that the others don't, like the ability to buff attacks or be used as a shield or to be ridden. Those unique abilities I want. The copy-pasted list of abilities with different animations and new strings of dial combos with different looks and slightly different timings, I don't. When I unlock a weapon in something like Devil May Cry 5, I get excited about it because for the most part, each new weapon is distilled down into its most unique abilities. None of them are meant to be used by themselves to play through the game, with the exception maybe of Rebellion, which is meant to be a kind of jack of all trades. A weapon like Faust has unique abilities no other weapon does. You can bet currency when fighting enemies, and it lets you spend orbs on different attacks. What it didn't need, though, is 20 dial combos, 2 dedicated stinger attacks, and another teleport and launcher. And because every weapon is condensed like that down to the things that are most interesting about it, the game is able to give you the tools to use any of it mid-gameplay without switching into the menu. Because it all can be assigned to a small list of tools you can flip through on the fly. In Bayo 3, all the interesting new moves other weapons have are buried in giant redundant movesets, which will usually also in turn be buried at the bottom of a menu. Same goes for the demon summons really. Do I want to summon Madame Butterfly because she can XXX or stun real slow? No, I just want her crazy launch. Do I want to spawn in some devil minions with the train? Hell yeah. But do I need another weapon that fires projectiles out in a little circle? Not really. Yes, you've stumbled on another DMC5 propaganda video. Sorry about that. Another thing is that you have to re-unlock a lot of these redundant moves every time you get a new weapon. It's not like in the old days where you'd buy Stinger and that was that. All weapons now have their Stinger move. No, you have to buy it for each one. I mean, now currency for items and moves are split. I know, proud souls are back in 2022. So you won't have to make tough choices about buying items over moves. But then why lock these moves away at all then? Just want me in the menu for a bit, I guess. It's like I always have move currency to spare, but never quite enough to get all the moves the latest weapon I've unlocked has. So I'm always left like a couple off, which is weirdly extra aggravating. I think the shop and unlock system was fine the way it was before. I don't know why it needed changing. Hey, who out there wants to hear me talk about controls again? The weirdest change here is now there's 2 lock-on buttons, kind of. One is the lock-on from previous games that changes your stance and lets you do launches, and the other is one that keeps the camera focused on an enemy, but doesn't put you in that different stance. And this is the one that shows the lipstick kiss icon now. It feels a bit messy. I guess this helps the most when playing as the second playable character, Viola, who blocks when she does the stance changing lock, and moves very slowly when doing so. Guess what button this new main lock-on is on though? R3. Putting aside the fact that this means you can no longer make the camera do an instant 180 in combat, I just can't stand lock-on being on thumb click. If you're moving the stick it's on, there's this slight period where you have to readjust your thumb to a good depression point. Why does everyone do this now? Is there some new certification process where you must include one feature from Dark Souls to release a game now? One of Sekiro's greatest features was that it added custom controls, because that meant I got to put lock-on on a shoulder button and attack and block on face buttons, like a normal game. Bayonetta 3, of course, doesn't have custom controls still. Instead, much like 2, we have controller maps A through D. Better than nothing, though the Switch comes to the rescue with custom control mappings of its own. So at least we can move that lock-on off R3 to a place I can access without moving my thumb off the attack buttons. I applied a bit of scrutiny to the ranking system in my review of the first game, but while I see improvements that help the system better sync with the gameplay, like I didn't stumble into any weird insta-kills in this game that would mess up my rankings. The reason I cared to dig into the ranking system with the original is because that's a game I can feel the temptation to actually perfect. Sure, there was a few minigames here and there, but not enough to where I would think I couldn't get those squared away and focus on mastering the core gameplay. It would be time-consuming and a very hard task, but getting all pure platinums in Bayo 1 does seem doable, and in a game where a perfect fight empowers the character with more and more power mid-play, it can be an alluring challenge. On the other hand, I am never going to try and pure platinum Bayonetta 3, and not just because of the increased amount of minigames that are around every turn now, but just because of the way the core gameplay is designed. Enemies in Bayo 1 usually attack you with weapons, with clear wind-ups, so you have a good idea of when something is going to hit you. Here you're dealing with all these huge enemies most of the time that will hit you by casually flicking their leg when you least expect, or some other part of their complicated enormous designs. That's when you're not being attacked by flying blobby things that just kind of hover around and whose attacks are hard to judge. Summon your own giants and the action on screen can get so cluttered or your camera stuck in weird places that I just can only imagine getting all pure platinums in this game being a nightmare, which fewer players than ever before will want to give a try. Perfecting a fight in Bayo 1 again was such a rush, seeing Bayo accrue more and more magic and become a stronger opponent in the fight. Here I don't feel that rush, that reward for keeping the flawless play going, because she's almost always got access to some crazy battlefield wiping super move. This is probably why in Infinite Climax mode enemies hit for an insane damage, to try and make survival somewhat difficult with all these crazy powers. The chapters where you have to play as Viola also put me off trying to get higher ranks in this game. She's basically another weapon set, isolated and placed in its own series of chapters. The big core change is that she doesn't trigger witch time on dodge, but on parry. Which, isn't terribly unique to just her. Bayonetta can unlock that power too. Neither is Viola's ability to fight while summoning eventually, as we've discussed. Ultimately, if you want to, you can make Bayonetta play pretty similarly to Viola. It's like if Dante could just unlock Red Queen and the Devil Arms, and they were mostly the same. Timing on this parry to get a good amount of witch time, combined with the types of enemies you're facing, with the camera also so zoomed out, can make her pretty frustrating to play as. Weirdly, from what I can tell, you can dodge offset, or rather block offset here and continue a combo, but not if you trigger a witch time with said block. So it would seem you can't activate witch time as Viola mid-combo. Making that possible while being more generous with the timing, I think could have made for something more enjoyable here. Her sword is like a combination of a DMC sword and a punching weapon, as you can charge every strike in your chain. It's cool and very versatile, but not different enough from Bayo's own weapons, I think, to justify entirely separate chapters. Before we get onto the story, I wanted to address a few weird things that annoyed me. Subtitles. If you turn them off, you won't understand the monsters. Bayo 2 had this problem as well, but the first with subs turned off would still display them for monsters with weird voices. So I don't know why they stopped doing that. Or, give us the option to mix and match, I guess. Also, these collect 5 blocks in the time limit challenges. I mean, they're kind of annoying, but would be less so if you could skip the cutscene showing you slowly where the blocks are on every attempt. Now, Bayo 2 did let you skip these, so again, kind of weird. One thing I have to give the games is that they've not been omitted, but they have reduced the amount of button mashing QuickTime. That said, there's still a bunch of rapidly wriggling the stick to break free moments, and I think somebody needed to remind the devs that this is a Switch game, and there's no way I'm risking a Joy-Con analog stick like that. I already had one that started drifting. Now, Bayonetta 3 is a mess, but there is a commendable level of ambition that keeps tripping over itself, and if the story and scenario the game put forward was still a fun and engaging one, then maybe I would have been more forgiving of its missteps, if I was just really captivated by the ride it was taking me on. But this is a weirdo chapter in the storyline of this series. Spoilers from here. The tone feels off just from the opening. Bayonetta is doing her usual thing and then gets attacked by monsters, and she struts her staff and dances cheekily around them as they try and take her out. Except, this time she's not the only one in danger. New York is being destroyed. So I feel like her showmanship is a little bit tactless this time. Enzo's crying for his family, and now Bayonetta comes off kind of sociopathic in her behavior. I don't know, give it some time before we start dancing at the scene of a disaster. In DMC5, they took it quite seriously in the moments the city was getting destroyed. They waited a month before breaking it down there. There's a scene later in the game when an army of soldiers gets possessed, and Bayo has them do a thriller dance before stomping on them all. Don't know if this was a good enough gameplay scenario to justify this mixture of tone. It's a bit of a shift for a series that up until now has been just about fighting monsters and the odd superpowered weirdo.
May they all finally know this.
Oh well, Bayonetta says rest in peace, so I guess it's okay. Hey, and you can't compare this to Nero being a bit mean to that soldier when his squad was getting attacked. And anyway, you don't understand, they're all fine. You didn't get the photo after? Bayonetta hacks her way through various different dimensions, meeting alternate versions of herself that then inevitably die, so Bayonetta can get their weapon. Bayonetta needs to find 4 of these magical cog things across 4 dimensions, and once you realize that a formula has kicked in, Bayonetta goes to a dimension, her counterpart there dies, and she comes back with the thing, you start losing any interest in these worlds because they're quite literally disposable. In previous games, I had an urge to take in the environment, to learn about the place I was in, and soak up the mood. But here I know I'm going to spend 3 chapters set piece flying around between giant empty arenas, so I have no urge to do so. There's an attempt to add more exploration into some of these levels, which I probably would have really enjoyed in a game like 2, but I have so much less of an incentive to care about these levels here. Even Bayo seemingly starts to grow wise to the game's formula. She doesn't even bother trying to save Magician Bayonetta. What's the mood here supposed to be, huh? Triumphant? Sad? Indifferent?
May you be reunited with your mummy.
Oh, it's okay. Bayonetta said RIP again. You can't just keep doing that every time you don't try very hard to spare someone, Bayo. I don't know. I don't even think the concept of alternate universe Bayonetta and friends is used that effectively here. You'd imagine this setup could have been used to explore alternate Bayonettas who made different choices and different timelines to give us more insight into the Bayonetta we know as she interacts with them, exchanges perspectives. Instead, it's like, what if Bayonetta was an Egyptian princess or a general in an ancient Chinese army? It's like, yeah, what if? It's hard to care. They might as well not be Bayonetta at all, but just entirely different superhero characters who happen to like prolonging their combo inputs. The only twist I thought was quite funny was Cop Enzo, but we only get like 2 minutes of him. Amongst all the alternate universe characters and Viola and so on, Bayonetta gets a little lost as a presence here. While in previous games she was always spouting some fun witticisms every other fight, here she's a lot quieter by comparison. She has to share the spotlight with so many and gets overshadowed by all the demon creatures that are summoned in and out of gameplay constantly. The first 2 games felt like real classic fun adventures with Bayonetta and maybe 2 other characters that went on a journey together and could all get a lot of screen time. Here the sidekick is Viola, and this may come as a surprise, but I don't play Bayonetta to play as a katana-wielding punk rock teenager with battle music to match. We only get one of these games every, 8 years. There's no time to waste here. I get that contrast leads to a fun juxtaposition with Bayonetta at times, but I don't know, I watch this character's antics and I just...
My name is Viola! V-I-O-L fucking A! Viola!
Start to feel like I'm too old for this shit. Oh wait, no I'm not. Here he is, the man with the plan. What's he gonna do? Oh man, don't do that. I think one of my biggest disappointments with this game's story is how it deals with Luca and Bayonetta's relationship, and how it gets sidetracked for all this other nonsense. Their interactions are one of my favorite parts of the original story, and arguably was the only major thread left deliberately unresolved by the end, as they wistfully thought about each other as the title came to a close, hinting at what might be to come. I think their relationship is really sweet, and Luca bringing things full circle by referencing his first appearance like this at the end.
Fate brought us here together, and it will never tear us apart.
As the 2 finally kiss and get dragged down to the underworld together, would have probably hit me really hard under different circumstances. I mean, it still kind of does. But the problem is this game doesn't spend enough time on them to naturally get us here. After the first game, the second game puts their romance on hold for a bit. They flirt a bit again, but it doesn't progress from there much. So if we were gonna finally have the scene where these 2 get together in a game, that game would ideally need to have a lot of scenes with them together, developing their flirtatious dynamic into a romantic one, alluded to towards the end of Bayo 1. The game where they finally do get together is the game they spend the least time interacting in. Luca barely has conversations with Bayo in this game. He doesn't even have much dialogue at all. He spends most of it turned into a wolfman, and Bayo and Viola have to keep snapping him out of it. Feels like they put this whole romance on hold and then suddenly pick up on it an entire 2 games later, when this one is winding down. I would have loved a third Bayonetta where Bayonetta and Luca go on an adventure together like the old days, and as the stakes grow larger than ever before, they realize they can't just keep flirting together and finally open up to their feelings. And then we're hit with a heartfelt scene like this. But it's like this game wants the end of that theoretical game without putting in the work, which is upsetting. I could go on. There's the villain being a bit weak, an interdimensional traveling entity trying to wipe out all life, resenting its creators. I don't know, I was kind of hoping for something that would tie the trilogy together a bit better, instead of them pulling this whole idea out of seemingly nowhere. Then there's the whole topic of how this game messes around with timelines and potentially the continuity of the series in the background. Something I just don't care to investigate the ramifications of when not invested in the core of the story first. I like that the stakes are really high in this game though, I just wish under maybe different circumstances. I gotta hand it to them I guess that the ending is a lot more climactic than 2's and throws everything in there, but it was the conclusion to a journey I didn't enjoy very much, and after it was all said and done, couldn't help but feel a bit empty watching the cast do its little dance. All the destruction apparently just got undone magically at the end, so retroactively Bayonetta looks less callous in this one, I suppose. This whole video is a really scathing bit of criticism, but at the end of the day, I am judging this game as a follow-up to Bayonetta, and how it builds on that game's ideas and legacy. If Bayonetta 3 popped into existence as its own game out of nowhere, I'd probably say this is a messy but interesting action game with a lot of content. It's hard to say that this is a bad game when there's so much of the great mechanical language of one of the best action games of all time strewn throughout it. I was just hoping for more from a modern-day successor to one of the greatest action games ever made. If there's one thing that comforts me, it's again the completeness of that first game. I could have lived in a world with just that first title, and Bayonetta would have remained a legendary presence in gaming for me. So no underwhelming sequel is some big missed opportunity to finally bring out the true potential of some great but slightly undercooked concept that demands iteration. It's just an interesting curiosity attached by name to something timeless. Maybe with that mindset, you'll be able to derive some enjoyment from it. Take it or leave it, and if it really disappoints you, you can always just go back to that first game. There's still probably a few pure platinums left to get, right?